After they've had it for 3 years. So you can't come back until you start doing this.
said, I support the
It's just funny.
You got that many people on the board?
I've seen homes get too much.
Well, or what? And if they guys are able to put that screen.
Oh, is it just?
Well, this must
If
be
they start
here.
screening on the table.
Show up to show
Don't
people.
say us and say you
Still
It's got the cord there.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's me and Richard.
Okay, you're telling me
Me
that
and
you're
Richard.
in.
Let the games begin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not sure if we have a forum.
You do.
Oh, do we?
Are you on? Send you a lot of PJs. Got some on
Yeah, Vicki, I'm gonna propose that I facilitate the meeting. Okay. All right, everybody, welcome. We're gonna go ahead and get started. First, I note that there's a quorum, and then so the people that are at the table know who's on the phone first. I know we've got Vicki Foreman on the phone, and who else is on the phone? Donna, you're there?
Johan Seniorium, OPC,
Oh, great.
and Nicole Steele from the Alder.
Okay, Nicole, so I know you guys are all hunkering down in your safe places for the big storm that's coming. So, the brave, the courageous are here around the table. And, just so you know who's around the table, we'll start on my right with Sandra Matavus-Fry.
Good morning, everyone. This is Sandra Matthew-Fry.
Hi, it's Lenny Berliner.
Hussein Karim with DOE.
Lance Locke, DOE.
Teresa Lawrence, DOE.
Ted Trey, DC Sustainable Energy Utility. John Mizrock.
Betty Ann Kane.
Okay, so we, with no objection, I note the presence of a quorum. And we will, start, it says introductions, Vicki. I think I just did that. So how about approval of the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve. Second.
Any comments? All right, it's been moved. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, any additions or subtractions to the agenda? There being none, we'll move on to, update on board members' vacancies. Mr. Green, our Assistant General Counsel.
Yeah, so we're trying to work with MODA to figure out a way
Who's
to,
Moda?
The mayor's office of talent and finance
Okay,
to, replace the, one member who has not, showed up since the first meeting. And we have 2 vacancies, which, will you be sharing the resumes or board?
They're in the folder.
Oh, they're in the folder. So, there are 2 vacancies that we're looking for.
now, do we have enough candidates or is there interest? Are we asking the board to propose anybody,
Well, the board last time suggested meeting with the property owners.
right?
Meeting,
Do we have any other, but individuals?
I have a potential individual, but I haven't yet gotten his resume. I just talked to him last week, that I wanted to propose. This is Vicky.
Yep.
And I'm so sorry, it's so hard from being on the phone, I don't want to be interrupting. But one question I thought we had also was whether there was anything that I think that Hussein was going to look into to accelerate an ability to deem a vacancy without awaiting the person's notifications that they intend to vacate?
Yeah, that's what we are going to hear back from MOTA for,
Okay.
procedures for essentially replacing the board member, the board member has been absent.
Terry, can you explain, we've got two resumes here, these are for which position?
These were sent over from MODA and they were not aligned with any specific industry or for the vacancy, they were just to be considered. It did not seem like these people applied to fill a particular industry on the board or community. So they just were up for consideration and then I guess we could have said which one they would be more appropriate for.
Because I noticed one of these people is currently a district government employee. I didn't know if we had any, I can't remember in terms of the rules, if there are certain statutory representatives of the People's Council, the Public Service Commission, and the department, but I didn't, so that's why I asked about
They're supposed to, the statute says they're supposed to represent certain groups. It doesn't, it's silent on whether they can or cannot be district government employees. The practice has been to have private
Right,
sector
right.
employees.
Okay. And in terms of the gas company, I do know from talking to Bernice that there is someone who is taking her place in things that she was doing at the gas company, her position has shifted. And she's injured, I can't remember the young lady's
She
name.
was Heidi.
Yes,
Yes.
who she introduced to me, yeah, who was going to, she thought was going to take her place on for this.
For the gap, yes.
Yes.
I
Okay,
think
that
they're
hasn't
waiting
come
that,
through yet,
right, I think they're just waiting the actual appointment,
okay.
but they have identified that person.
So that one's taken care of, so it's the building management position that's the vacant one?
Yes, the building management and of course the chair that we are.
Vicky, this is Sonia.
Yes.
Which position are you, that your candidate represent or would be interested in, or that you're considering for?
I think that you could be good for the chair, but I'm assuming the best that article, the best the mayor's health, or building management.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment on this Crystal Mays. In some respects, she could come under the building management, but it's maybe not the kind of building management that we're necessarily looking for.
Maybe we're looking for someone who's like actively currently involved in large, either multifamily or
Something like that.
office, commercial buildings.
Yes. The person I have is more of a stretch for building management, it's more like, highway and big engineering infrastructure.
We had talked about either talking to AOVA or the property management,
Has
Right.
that been, has that
or
been
suggesting that to the mayors.
So
have you had time to arrange that meeting or not?
Was that a question to me?
Yes, have you had time to arrange that meeting?
Was I arranging the meeting? I'm sorry.
No, the one with the building manager.
No, I think I thought there was something, occurring before that, but I don't, but if I missed, I will absolutely do that. Sorry about that.
Well, there's BOMA and there's AOBA.
And you were going, your office was going to do.
We're trying to get in touch or see if someone from BOMA is interested. But we also can't preempt MOTA. And so we've got MOTA's recommendations. Our folks, I guess like any folks, but our folks would have to go through the mayor's office of talent and
Right, but to find them, we can do it by ourselves.
absolutely.
But first, let's find them.
I might be able to contact, I've served on this energy efficiency forum board for a long time. That U.S. Energy Association code runs, and I think they're active in it. So let me,
Is that BOMA or AOBA?
I think it's both.
Almost national.
Yeah, that's,
Bummer's Building Office Managers Association,
International.
yeah.
where AOBA is,
It's the local. But well, I always
AOBA include the owners,
Yes.
Okay.
where BOMA's not necessarily the owners. But it's kind of two.
Met, building office.
Okay, there's,
So may I just ask for clarification when you just said we can't bump, the mayor's office? Does that mean that we need to affirmatively, or somebody needs to affirmatively, speak to the two resumes that have been provided before the mayor's office would look at another candidate? Although there's 3 vacancies, but.
we can make recommendations on any of the resumes in front of us and
Okay.
resumes not in front of us. We're, I think, expected to make recommendations back to MODA.
Yes.
Okay,
Wouldn't we just refer the applicants to vote?
Yes. Okay.
does that mean we do anything with these 2 resumes that we have now? Should we make recommendations, or, I mean, I guess one question I just have though is whether or not it's polite to talk about people in a public meeting.
Yeah, I these applications come from MODA?
Yes.
They did.
Yes.
So we don't have to refer them to them because they already got them.
Right, but they would be looking for us to make a recommendation.
On these 2 people?
Yes, as well as the director said, anyone new who we would refer to
Right.
them and then say, where we think
Well, without,
the person is.
saying anything personal about all either of these people, just looking at their resumes, I would question whether or not a current DC government employee who is not even doing building management would be appropriate, would have the right kind of input, perspective, let's put it that way. And the other person does not appear to be, does seem to be perhaps involved in business management on their own as an individual.
But not necessarily building. Seems like a
Project
skill set and,
management, more project management,
yeah,
yeah.
architecture,
For
design,
build outs,
whatever.
architecture,
Right.
design, et cetera. So I would like to make a motion that we recommend to the mayor's office of talent and appointments that they reach out to the current active AOBA and MoMA and try to encourage looking for someone who is actively involved in commercial, residential or commercial building management.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
A second. Any discussion?
Just to maybe add to it that, I think like we talked about the last time, that the mayor's office does it too quickly on it, and I think, and I'm sorry, it was not understanding that I was, to do the reach out, but the, like John was just talking about, or I at least help to accelerate the mayor's office reaching out by our doing that. To trying to send some people or some spokespersons to the mayor.
Sure.
We had talked about having some sort of a subcommittee that was going to talk with the building management people about what it is that the board does to try to entice them. That was my recollection, I think that's the name of it.
Well, I made that I would add to the motion that we'd be happy to assist. I think Tommy's point is that, we can't go over as mayor, but as a
Sure.
board, as board members, we would be happy to assist.
Sure.
in the discussion.
Okay.
And I move for that friendly amendment.
So just for clarification, the board is not approving the 2 applicants that are before us and recommending that MODA search further with more specificity.
That
Okay. Got it? Everybody got that?
Yeah,
Yes. May I ask
I agree.
also, is there anything in particular that should be looked for a candidate for the chair position? Like, that's not a particular constituency, is it, or is the mayor's constituency?
I believe that it's I think it's primarily an issue of familiarity with
General.
the general topic.
Familiarity, I would say more than familiarity,
Well, knowledge, et cetera.
knowledge, yeah.
Of course, we don't, originally, the first few iterations, the mayor had appointed to get it all started, and then
Mhm.
from the head of the agency to do it, and then reached a point that we felt it was better to have someone outside, who's not with DOEC, not advising yourself, essentially, and you agreed to that.
Exactly.
And so someone with a broad knowledge, that's the word, of energy and energy efficiency, energy sustainable program, et cetera.
So, but this, I mean, this
That is the
person,
mayor's,
right, I was gonna say, this person, you know, per the legislation, this is the mayor's
Yeah.
direct,
yeah, and
Appointed,
there's no
so-
particular category connected.
right,
Yeah.
and so that person should be, you know, ought to be somebody that the mayor, the mayor's office,
Just come
yeah, so, I don't, and, you know, you're conflicted in this, you know, simply because you run the agency.
Right.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, I advise myself most mornings. Sometimes I don't take
That's
my
right.
advice. So it's no
well,
problem.
I get a lot of advice from other people, particularly my wife. But it makes up my mind often. But, yeah, I was just thinking that, have they, has the office focused on a likely candidate of who they might want?
Well, there had been a candidate, but who's involved in litigation. and-
Oh, yeah, that person,
and
yeah,
just-
that guy was, yeah, he was knowledgeable, but
Yes.
Yeah, and
it's
was
totally conflicted, in his opinion,
in his
totally
opinion,
conflicted
so
out.
he stepped
Well,
down.
I ran into him in the grocery store
Yeah.
last week, and he said he was far too busy to be independent.
Okay.
Wow.
He reconsidered.
Well,
And the litigation.
uh,
Okay, so
Okay.
we will work on getting that resolved in a way that is satisfactory to all interests involved.
Well, we didn't go over the motion.
So, all right, with a friendly amendment, and should the friendly amendment be reiterated, restated?
The amendment was that the members of the board would be happy to assist the mayor in that outreach to Hales or Bulmer and whatever other contacts there are.
Thank you. All right, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, very good. So moving forward, Vicky's very favorite topic, the annual report. Take it away, Vicky.
Okay, so I circulated, I don't think it was in the batch that went around this morning, so do people have the document that was circulated last week, which was the draft outline?
That's in the packet.
Yes.
Is it? Okay. And then this morning, Dr. Cooper sent a suggestion, as well, or some suggestions for inclusion in this report. So I thought we might try and do what we did last year, which was maybe assign ourselves generally to sections, and flesh out a little bit on the outline, and then try and set a schedule for ourselves. Get the second front of me. So I had thrown into the executive summary, and I think last year John and Rock was really helpful in giving us the vision and the general tone and outlook that we wanted to capture and some topics we wanted to hit. These are some of the issues that I was highlighting, the nuance we had with the solar carve out, the comprehensive energy plan objectives, grid modernization and solar for all. I didn't know if others thought that there were topics that we ought to be addressing in a sort of overarching sense or not. I'm just running through, but if you want to also see what I suggested here. also talked about, and then last year we talked about where we were on the DC SEU contract, and now we can still talk about where we are still in progress in getting the DC SEU contract finalized. I suggested crossing out what we talked about last year, which was a summary or an update of all the relevant Clean and Affordable Energy Act amendments. We could talk about the board's activities, and I thought it might be worthwhile for us to check in on how the progress on the recommendations that we made last year.
Is that FY 2015, Vicki?
I'm sorry.
FY 2015? On the document, this may be a typo, FY 20, it says FY 2014.
Well, you know what? Last year we still had a section on board's recommendations from 2014.
Yes, but
So-
we're further along. Did we make any recommendations last year? I think we did.
I'm not hearing you, I'm sorry.
We made some recommendations last year. Yeah, during FY 2015, we made recommendations. And so should
Yes,
we,
so
should we be
I'm
reporting
sorry,
on those?
I'm sorry. I would, it's probably too shorthand. In Roman 4, which are our activities in 2015, we can include our recommendations. Maybe we should just specify that. I'll just throw that in now. I was just highlighting that we separately had a section on still outstanding recommendations 2 years later.
Okay.
Yes. And thought that might be worthy of commentary if some of the objections or objections.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Some of the recommendations are still outstanding, but they not, relevant. But yeah, the recommendations that the board has made this past year should certainly be reflected as well. So I'm going to just pop those into 4 and make you know as we speak. We made recommendations in Roman 6 for this year and beyond. And I think we're recommending increased emphasis on energy efficiency and solar program coordination. So we can talk about how those are doing and or be making recommendations for 2018. So I'm not getting my ears confused.
Can I sort of think out loud a little bit on, I have some thoughts on the executive summary because the executive summary in my mind is a little bit related to 6. I think there are a couple of things happening that really we need to sort of try and get a handle on. One is that the whole renewable energy generating capacity portion of DCSU is facing a series of issues coming up. It's in a different operating environment than when it was before the new RPS. And I noticed that you're not reporting on, you didn't show any additions in the January report on renewable energy generating capacity. And since we have a clean energy plan, structure, process in place, there are questions about the balance going forward for DCSU. I mean, they're sort of hit a wall, they're going to hit a wall on energy efficiency, and at some point, they're as efficient as we can possibly be. And so then, then what should their focus be? Or do you think it's premature to talk about?
I think the focus starts with the new contract of performance measures.
Right.
And one of the questions would be, as we review that, or this is what I'm thinking about in response, is that we ask the SEU, do you foresee hitting a wall? Or is there, an external factor not contemplated in the commitment that we're making and that you're making to the new contract. But without feedback of saying that, I mean, so we're not hearing that SU can't meet their contractual targets. In fact, we're committed to them now. So, but that may be an area to get feedback on. Is that is there a barrier on the horizon?
Oh, I'll just say on the notes, and Lenny's observation that the January report did not include any numbers for renewables. The DCSU doesn't report renewables on a monthly basis, they do it annually. And I know they can speak more as to why, but you wouldn't see like monthly in that achievements chart. You wouldn't see like a monthly update for the renewables benchmark.
So I'm sorry, I'd actually like to revisit something that we've talked about over time. I mean, maybe it's in this report, maybe it's at the retreat, but basically, the old, why are we here? What's our purpose in life here? But more importantly, in the context of the greater plan for DC, because there is, this great, ambitious, there are really strict standards that have evolved. There's this great, ambitious vision to be, X energy efficient and renewable by X amount of time. And SCU I see as a tool under your purview, under the purview of DOE. And now you've been in for a while and basically had a chance to be thinking deeply about all these things. The question is now, are we still doing what the board's supposed to be doing? Is SEU still doing what, that's, on the one hand, it's in the contract, on the other hand, candidly, I don't think we've entirely rationalized the SEU and our role in the context of all the things that are going on.
Donna, I think that you're right, and that's why the comprehensive energy plan is so important. And now that it's, we call it draft, just so nobody feels like they're left out. But it is now the, canvas.
The working document.
That everybody's painting on. And everybody needs to fit in unless there's something wrong with the plan, which, will come out. But you're right, it's a roadmap to the ambitious goals. And SEU is one of the vehicles for getting there.
Right.
So I think that now that the comprehensive energy plan is out there, that just like any other major stakeholder group, the board probably needs a presentation on the comprehensive energy plan and a greater opportunity as a board to respond to it. Because you're right, the SEU needs to exist within that plan. And that's true for our whole administration of energy.
Right.
And I'm thinking that in the report the council received is the place to remind council that that is indeed the case.
Mm-hmm.
And that as they're going forward, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that we need to remind ourselves
And remind ourselves
before we
that-
remind
yes,
others.
Well, exactly, and I think that that's John's point, that we need to evaluate, is the mission still the same as it was when it was initially created? And how do we incorporate, whatever changes have occurred into our going forward, our mission? I would submit that it has changed. And that with the CEP, as well as other developments in the marketplace, that we need to rethink what our role is.
Yeah, I mean, those of us that have been around, since the SEU basically have seen DDOE go to DOE, and for an elevated focus on energy within, it's a partner along with the environment and the comprehensive energy plan and a bunch of other things. And I'm not sure that we've, as a board, basically been able to rationalize all that's happened and discuss it. So that, again, the presentation, I love the idea of that, the retreat, which we haven't done in a while. I think it'd be good if we could do it, but More
Okay,
importantly, yeah.
Betty Ann Kane's hand is up. You wouldn't necessarily see that, Betty Ann.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's good to look at things in the overarching context of the comprehensive energy plan, which only a small part of which is actually law, is mandatory. But the SCU, also how it fits into not only the overarching comprehensive energy plan, but the law that created the SCU, which has several things, the new contract, and then all of the other things that are the Renewable Energy Development Fund, so you have to sweep it, which we're not gonna let them do. It's got $20 million, it's March 1st, probably got another 20, I don't know how much you got, we haven't seen it. It's gonna have twice as much money as the SCU, and their mandate is to do renewables. And then there is other pots of money too. We've got $20 million commission for, demonstration projects. We've got $11 million for energy efficiency. And I would not agree. I'm going to take a look. I don't think we're ever going to hit the wall at energy efficiency. And energy efficiency and renewables are two different things.
Oh, that's my point, is that they are two different things. They are
But
two
energy
different things.
Where was
efficiency.
Betty Ann? Go ahead.
Energy efficiency, you just look at the housing stock in the city and look at the installed appliances and furnaces and all of that. And in multifamily buildings, et cetera, there is a huge way to go on energy efficiency. Whether you're talking about conserving on energy that is generated from renewable sources or generated from fossil sources, just to conserve the total amount of energy. And then if you look at electric vehicles, you're going to increase the use of electricity. And so,
So one thing I would just note, is
Vicki?
I remember that at least the draft CEP, did call for a pretty active role by the SCU in coordinating everything in the CEP, or a lot of them in the CEP. So I think there is an obvious nexus between what the board should speak to, just in terms of responding to the CEP and its vision of the SCU's role. And I do think that all the things that we're talking about right now will end up finding a home under the auspices of that discussion.
Without question, the SCU is a very powerful tool to help meet these goals. And within context of this, the board will also need to know, it's not public yet, but the mayor will be introducing legislation to create a green bank, which will, and then obviously the issue of pace. If we do, and I think we're going to do what California did, and take pace to the residential level. So those are two major financing levers. And so the role of the SCU should be as strategic and also as much to take on the hardest stuff as possible. That's, John, I think you're right on target with that. We can either do a full dog and pony presentation with an interactive presentation on the comprehensive energy plan, either at a retreat or at one of these meetings. Now that we've gone monthly to these meetings, it's even possible, depending on your time, where you may feel more comfortable with this taking the place of a retreat, if this works for you. Because doing both at the same time is a lot to ask of you as voluntary members.
But, I mean, I think it's important to do this sooner rather than later. I mean, I defer to everybody else's opinion. I think it's a good idea to make it part of it. And do it sooner.
I think it's relevant to how we write the report.
Oh, it is indeed. I mean, you see how the executive summary changes.
It could be a substitute for retreat. You wouldn't have to have both. I guess the only issue would be whether or not you could arrange the time factor to arrange an actual retreat, particularly if it's off premises, all that. The time, it
Well,
should be time.
you've committed to monthly meetings,
Yeah.
and that's a big commitment on your behalf. And we may be able to help to design our part of resources to make sure that the monthly meetings cover what would have been covered in a retreat, if that works for you?
Works for me.
We'd like to have the next meeting be briefing on the comprehensive energy plan.
Yes.
April meeting.
I mean, I'm in favor of it. I do, and I hear from it.
But John, I think you're exactly right, because we're gonna stay in a changing environment, but as Betty Ann has brought up repeatedly, how does it all fit together?
Right.
And that's where an advisory group with your range of expertise, at least it's one form to help us keep looking at that, how does it all fit together?
I don't recall the outcome of the discussion on the difference between the retreat and whether or not that would be subject to the open meeting rule or not. And I see benefits from two approaches, we just need to decide what we want. In a retreat, which is, if it is not an open meeting, there's a possibility that the questions, the probe may be different and deeper. In an open meeting, there's a benefit that the public would also have the benefit of the briefing. So,
Well, the last time we did the retreat, it was a few years ago, I did some research on this, and essentially, for a retreat, because it's closed, we cannot discuss anything substantive.
and so that would preclude it from being, this would be substantive. Okay.
So can I move that the April meeting be devoted to a presentation and to our understanding of the comprehensive energy plan?
I'd be more than happy to do a presentation on that. That's not even sure that's even needs a board action other than to general consensus that will be at the top of our agenda.
Certainly my feeling, people on the call has an Vicky.
Anybody else? Donna, I know you have been wrestling with it, and we're, I can't remember if we're scheduled to come out and meet with you or not on this. But, and Vicky, any concerns about having the comprehensive energy plan called Clean Energy VC be the main presentation at our next meeting next month?
Only if everybody promises to sign up now for certain sections of the draft. Especially the things that are reporting on what was already done as opposed to the visionary forward sheet that everybody loves, is gonna probably benefit from having that. So, no, I don't have any concerns. This is Donna.
Fair enough.
So, sorry, the question was directed to Donna.
To both of you. Fair enough, Vicky. All right, Vicky, continue with your task at hand here.
Okay, well, that was a very helpful discussion. I'm annotating the outline as we go to cover what's being discussed now and put in Donna's recommendations on things that we're trying to obtain. But does anybody else have any other comments on the general categories and want to sign up? Hearing none, shall I make assignments?
Sure.
Okay, well, the executive summary is probably gonna wait until the comprehensive energy plan presentation, and that'll help us frame everything. I might nominate John.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it, but I think, to your point, I think this comprehensive energy plan at all, I think is important for us to be considered as we go forward. So I'm happy to do it, I'm just saying that I think we need all this information.
And I'm sorry, I'm not sure I caught all of that,
I
but,
said yes.
I said yes, I was bobbing and weaving, but I didn't duck quick enough. So,
okay, then, I think we should be writing up something on the progress on the new SEU contract.
In relation to that, I would be happy to review the FY16 audit when it's available.
Are you also there? Is it anything?
That was, Lenny, said that she would be happy to review the 16 audit.
So is that
Okay,
contract?
great. So that's one of the things that I have on the request for data from DOE down at the bottom. This is a separate category, or I mean, it's related because it's the background here. But that's great. I'll put Lenny on that. And there are a number of other requests as well. I think Donna was saying the EMD report we need to have as well. And I'm adding that to the list. I'm assuming we'll all be wanting to review all of those. But maybe one of us should be the lead in summarizing that theme per report.
Vicki, the second bullet that Donna suggested we include, which you're including on the data on the total funds captured for the utility customers to date.
Yeah.
I could take that on, there was an audit that was done by the BC auditor report on that. That was as of last fiscal year, updated. I think there are quarterly reports that the department sends to the council also. So we can take on that. I'll take on that.
Great.
That's really, we're starting hearings on Wednesday, so we'll take that little piece.
Okay.
On the EMD piece, if anyone that has not volunteered, I can take that piece as well.
Okay. When do we expect that? Or when would these things be done? These, the audit and the EMD report?
Lance or Tricia?
I would say probably in the end of May. The procurement is still on the street. It's going to be closing, I believe, next week. So as soon as it's closed, they'll be able to get started because it's an RFQ. So an RFQ is really the city going based on the bids they receive, so there's no extensive evaluation to be done. And I think the turnaround time would be 60 days for the evaluator. So at least by the end of May, we'll have the full report. As customary, we can schedule a briefing that's usually provided to the board. We can have the evaluator come and present their findings to the board. Maybe if we have a meeting, I think we have a meeting scheduled in June, at the June meeting, we can have that presentation done for the board.
And the audit, is that available?
The audit will be available. Right now, the audit is being reviewed by VEIC. The auditor completed their draft, and as part of the process, they have to present it to VEIC, review and comment, and then it comes to the agency once those comments are incorporated. So
That's April sometime?
no, I say within the next week or two. It depends on how soon VEIC can get the.
It's April. It's April.
Yeah, they will react. It might be April.
Okay.
Should we ask for a little summary of that for the discussion in April, whether that's in a retreat or in a board meeting?
What is it? A
We're
summary?
gonna do the briefing for the comprehensive energy plan at the April meeting, which will take up, that'll take up the whole
Well, we
thing.
could have a
Maybe a
summary.
written summary
A written summary would be
of
nice.
the audit.
I mean, yeah, that's
So,
a very
no,
good
And
idea.
we plan on sharing a copy of the full audit report to the board too, so you can have both. You can have the summary.
Send it out as soon as it's available.
So that's the fiscal audit,
Yes, this is
Which
a
one?
financial audit.
the financial audit?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
This is Sandra. I would be willing to, do, I guess it's components of 6, the solar program coordination and the going forward energy efficiency.
Great. Thank you.
Sandra, I'm sorry, is your report done?
I'm so I'm 10 months
Thought I
pregnant.
missed something.
10 months pregnant. It's done, but we're still fine tuning it, making certain that it's perfect.
Which report did you say?
You're talking to a government bureaucracy, so.
Value of solar, and we're also having, the value of solar that OPC was directed by the council to do, as well as the low-income component of that. It's almost I hope that it will, no, I hope it will be out, mid-April, the very latest. You always tell me that, straight.
Okay, what else, Vicky?
Well, I think we just need some volunteers for 2, 3, 4, and 5A. I'll do 2. Board's activities in FY 2016 and recommendations.
Can we do board activities, Teresa?
To list,
And would,
well, under this one, they just made a note that they wanted to talk about recommendations from FY 15, like to say, based on what they recommended in 15, how it informed.
so board activities primarily is that could be just putting together all our minutes and attaching.
Right, and usually we had a section that says, the board met 10 times.
Oh, yes, we
3
definitely
times
can
on
take care
X
of that.
dates, and
Yeah,
heard reports on X, and the minutes are attached.
Yes.
yeah, we should be able
will
to do that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Lenny, were you thinking of something bigger than that, though, when you were referring to the board's recommendations made in 2016?
You mean in 2015?
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss them.
So we had 5 with the board's recommendations in 2014,
Right,
and we wanted to add 2015
add
to that.
2015 to that, that'd be useful.
Yeah.
That's a separate exercise, I think, than DOE is going together,
Right.
and then I can
Right.
Any takers? We will name names at the end of this exercise.
I have a question for Donna. It's Lenny. Hi, Donna.
Hello, Wendy, how are you?
I'm great. I see that you're looking for data on green jobs.
Correct.
Where would we find that, Connie?
Interesting,
A couple of places, if I may, Tommy.
Yeah.
The DCFC report, the EMV report will reference the number of green jobs certified. And also DOE collects certified payroll information from the DCSU on a monthly basis.
so are the green jobs only within the
I
SEU?
think we need to be able to compare the progress made by our little universe with the larger DC Green Jobs universe. Otherwise, we're not really
I
learning
don't
much.
know if DC government collects, somebody may.
Does the feds? I thought the feds did.
Well, that's a very complicated task, to put it lightly. And secondly,
Donna, what I was focusing on, because we talked about contractors as well, we also have the requirements around green jobs that are specific to the SBU contractor, even though I know what Libby's saying from the border. So I was focusing more so on how we're tracking in that particular respect, and also looking at a comparison over the years as well.
Okay.
So it's within the four corners of the contract of the SEU.
Exactly.
Okay,
If we can find in an efficient way, broader labor force information, I think that would be useful.
well, I think just like we'll do an interactive presentation on the clean energy plan, we're in the beginning phases of creating a green economy team or unit within here. Because we are starting to do this, especially with the REDF monies, that we're starting to attach job development beyond SEU and some other things that we're doing. So we're trying to consolidate that here as well. So why don't, at some point, we do a presentation to the board on what do we define as the green economy with green jobs
I think that
as
would
a
be very
subset
useful.
for the board, because we're doing that internally right now.
And
I
Ms.
think
Ms.
that's-
Berlin and Dr. Cooper, Mr.
That would be
Director,
very helpful.
if I may,
But the idea also would be to help to reconcile the data on green jobs.
right, there's the contractual-based data that we collect for green jobs, which is complicated, as Dr. Locke has is mentioned, but there's also the development of jobs that, we've been with this workforce development program now that's not a contractual requirement, but it's something that we believe is just the right thing to do for the contract. So we've created a number of green jobs in the local, quite frankly, the national economy that would not be counted as part of the green jobs under the mechanism that we currently utilize under the contract. I think it would be good for purposes of this board to understand those sorts of jobs that have been created as well through the work that we do.
Absolutely, because remember, we're reporting to the council, so we need to offer a contest, I think.
And it does become, in many respects, definitional, in how we not only to define the green economy, but also what constitutes a green job.
Yeah, so I think with a focus on SEU, but a broader policy discussion of what the department or the agency is doing, and how we're trying to capture this, and target investments in this is a very good idea.
I think ultimately it will help you going forward. DCSU is a primary tool for the department. And when you're thinking about what does the department do, should we modify the DCSU contract to enable it to do X or Y, that we need help there.
So Vicki, we kind of colored outside the lines there a little bit, but we, on Donna's recommendation, I don't know if anybody agreed to writing that part up. Any idea where we are on that?
If we have data on green jobs, I don't mind writing it up.
We do, in
Lots of data.
relationship to the SCU.
Yes, I mean, but what she's looking for, I don't mind writing
Yeah.
it up.
Okay. All right, Vicki, Lenny's gonna do the job part. What else is needed?
Does it make sense for you all to provide a presentation on that in May? Will you have the green economy group a little bit, more formed? I don't know if it is more.
Sure, we can do it in May. Sure.
Will somebody remind me when this report is due?
June 30.
June 30?
Okay, so if the EMV report is coming in at the end of May, so in June, we're not gonna necessarily have enough time to digest it. It's kind of a big piece of the puzzle.
What I would like to suggest that will help us all as we go forward with this, given the extended time frame in which we're going to be quote unquote running, is that perhaps at the May meeting, Vicki, or between sometime by email between April and May, that those of us who've taken some sections, that we try to give you an outline of those sections with little dot points, so you can take a look and see, make sure we haven't forgotten anything, or if we're straying too far from, the purpose of the report. And that way, it will make life a lot easier when we actually have to turn those things into full sentences and paragraphs.
Sure, are you suggesting May, did you say?
Yeah, I was thinking, it could, if we have something earlier, why not send it to you? But I think by May, we should each have an outline of the section that we are working on. And that helps us, nudge a glance.
Sure.
Okay, and then we can get all of the information that we need.
Okay, thanks.
Well, the EM&B report from last year, did that come in time to be included in last year's annual report? So maybe we need to look at that.
Well, if we
reference.
waffled it.
Yeah, but now since we waffled it, then maybe we could at least take a look back at that and then just look at comparing it to what the new one comes in. I don't know. Since that's gonna happen every year, even if we've moved it off to June 30th, the EMV doesn't come in until end of May. Maybe you have to kind of look back.
What do you think, Tom?
That was the purpose of moving the date back for submission of the report, so it's
Right.
later.
So that we'd have everything.
don't think it hurts. I can't see what would be the downside of that particular 6 week did, unless it's just resource time, time.
I think it's resort, but you know, we did, I do recall that there was a lot of discussion about a couple of the entries that we had made, you know, on a little chart, you know, the summary of the report, and there were some issues, you know, with the reporting that we had available to us, but then it wasn't final.
So now that part would be final. And so I think any concrete information for council is good on this. And they're getting more focused on this in general.
And they would see if they had been some development or, you know, corrected, if there was a correction needed to be made.
Whether or not it happened in 2016.
So Donna, would you be willing to do that in your you know, review of the EMD report?
I think that Donna has to at 11, so I don't believe she's still on.
Okay, maybe we can send her a note.
Well, we'll put it in context anyway to kind of look back at the prior years and then what we've got new.
Yeah.
Okay. What else, Vicki?
I think that the rest is probably just stuff all of that, taking a look at. So I think we're fairly done. If anybody has anything further they want to add, by all means, I will circulate a revised outline just based on today's discussion.
Okay.
I do have two clarifying questions with regard to the data request of DOE on the bottom. Specifically number 3, that asks for the total amount paid to third parties as incentives in FY16. To get a clear sense, Vicki, of specifically what you're referencing here as incentives, because within the DCSU contract, incentives can be paid directly to homeowners, we can pay incentives through contractors, we have some upstream incentives that are paid to manufacturers, so I'm trying to understand specifically what is she looking for when she says incentives. Or
I
just,
think that the question I was having was just to the extent that we're trying to identify when the SEU identifies that it has a shortfall and the money is the issue that is inhibiting it from being able to accomplish all of its objectives. I'm just trying to get a helpful sense, since we all talk about the public center too, what the money is being spent on. So third party means them just being spent on provided to third parties, meaning the rebates to homeowners and the like.
Would that be covered in the financial audit? Would that be a category? I mean,
no, it's not a category in the audit, but the DCSU does report those kind of figures. So we can give you a summary number on the total amount of dollars paid out as incentives. I just wanted the board to be aware of when you say incentives, it can be a completely mismatch between incentives paid to homeowners versus incentives that are paid to, you know, retailers or manufacturers.
We need to know all of them.
All of them.
All of them.
Would be helpful. Can we
All of the above.
categorize that?
And then number 4, you said name of subcontractors, whether they're CBEs or not. We can give you that listing, and I believe the amount paid to each other. There's no owing amount outlined in the CSU contract, so we'll give you a full detail of the subcontractors for FY16 and the amounts paid.
Thank you. And then I think the one about posting all the presentations was just that it's looking at the website, there's certain things on it, but not others. So when I was looking, for example, to try to scramble to find last year's board report, I couldn't find that on our website. So I would encourage that it be more inclusive. For example, the 13, 14, 15 board reports and presentations that have been made over time.
We will make sure that maybe they're too deeply embedded into the website, so we'll make sure that it's very apparent through the board's link through the board's website.
Did you hear that, Vicki?
I did not.
Okay, that, I believe what Dr. Lawrence is saying is that it's there, but it may be too far down under the buttons, and so that we will bring it up further to where it's easier to access and find. The
Thank
board,
you.
the annual board reports.
Okay, great. Oh, yeah, good. I did not see that on there. Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else on this outline. If anybody else does, then I'll
Okay, so anything else on the outline of the board report?
Can I mention just, I guess one clarifying matter, which is 5C, I see this, that this has recurred a couple of years in a row. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows on this PJM capacity market, we're in our second year now of bidding into the market and receiving revenues from the market on a quarterly basis. So I don't know if the board is still looking to see some sort of analysis per se. Activity has been going on now for well over a year in this area, and we've been
Well,
doing
it will
very
show
well.
up in the financial statement, won't it? I mean, in the audit.
Well, maybe no.
Okay, do you have financial statements? That is the question.
We have financial statements, but the money that's been received from the PJM market has not been put on our PO for spending yet. So we haven't, it's been received. It's income.
Income.
It's
Do you
income.
have a financial statement? I mean,
Well, wait a minute, there's,
It's gotta be
let's,
close to zero.
let's reconcile this. Would it show up in your audit?
No,
No,
it would not.
Okay, so where would it be recognized?
The only time it would be recognized is if we add it to the BCSU contract. Right now, it's funds that are sitting in the SETF, but it's not part of the BCSU contract.
okay, if we can add.
Okay, somebody explain to me, somebody explain to me, please,
Hear from,
what you,
let's say,
what you audit if you don't have financial statements. Financial statements are what are audited.
so the specific question, we can come back to that specific question, is bidding the funds, the revenue from bidding into the PGM, the savings or the efficiency amount. The same, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, this OCFO, with respect to the funds from PJM, OCFO has advised us that those funds have to first come to the district in the SETF and then be recycled out because they were funds that were generated from programs funded by the SETF. So we are at the point where the funds have gone into SETF, but we haven't done a contract amendment yet to add them into the SU. So any audit of the SU right now will not show those funds.
But I think the question here in this category, that the question was about on 4C was, or 5C, that the category in the annual report is the status of the board's recommendations from 2014. So that section C, the recommendation was that the DC SEU should share its analysis concerning participation. As I recall back in 2014, you hadn't done it yet, you were thinking about it.
Right.
So I would think that this section of the report would say that SEU has done it. This is what they've done, this is how much they collected, this is where the money is, and this is what the future
Okay, so
might
that's
be,
kind of
you know,
It's
more
for
of a
it.
current state.
It's a narrative of an update on the participation of the SEU in the PJM. I didn't know, you know, where the status was of that.
Yeah.
So I think just a paragraph might come from you.
And just
What
out of
happened to
curiosity-
that recommendation?
It's easily prepared because,
Yeah.
but I agree with you, Madam Chair. It's something that we should think about more in a current term state because there's been money coming in that's been
Yeah.
collected, there's a sunset.
How much, where
Yeah.
is
Where
it?
is
But
it, et
certainly,
cetera.
one of the more interesting initial challenges when I got here is how do we recognize that revenue and how do we, you know, the government always has trouble taking in money. And then figuring out did a contractor get it, you know, enrich themselves from the contract and how is that accounted for back into the contract? And I think, Lance, why don't you two work
Write up
on
a
that
about it.
of how that, A, what's the amount and what do we project, but B, how did you solve that problem of navigating? Either you or the same.
I mean, it's a great, I'd like to know because I had this issue with the National Science Foundation 2 years ago, which was, all they do is get money. We were proposing, we were forming a not-for-profit. They wanted to raise money to use, and they didn't know how to do it. They literally didn't know how to do
Sure,
it.
they've never seen a nonprofit financial statement.
So, but, well, they didn't know how to account for it and take it in, but just out of curiosity, is this a big deal or a little deal without holding anybody to figure?
Let's answer your question first by, Ted, is there a ballpark amount that?
Sure. Last year, we received about $144,000. This year, we would anticipate receiving around $180,000.
So,
And that's after, I should note, after the fees have been paid to the third-party vendor who actually.
Right, that's what you
Right.
did. I
so
mean,
that's the
So that's
quantifiable amount.
Yeah.
But the
Okay, good.
issue was big of,
Where do you put it?
yeah, of somebody making money off of our contract in a way that we want them to, but,
Yeah.
so you need both of
That'd
them.
be good, and it would assure the public too, so you know,
Yes.
so it's transparent, this is what was done, this is how it was handled, this is where it is, these are the plans.
Yes. Okay. All right, anything else on here that jumps out at you?
So we're gonna put that Lance and
We'll do a narrative
narrative, we're gonna,
Yeah, we'll
we're
work
gonna
on it.
provide that narrative.
on that update,
Okay,
yeah.
and then we can look at it, hand it in, say, this is what they
Ted
reported.
can show how they did that in and got revenue for the third party and all that. And Lance can show how the DC government, yeah. Okay. If there's nothing else on the annual report, Vicki, planning for, closed meeting outreach strategy?
Okay, so I believe that the last time that we met, we talked about, outreach coming from an identification from the SEU on challenges that they are facing, that we would then turn into a workshop or opportunity to talk with stakeholders on potential resolutions to those challenges.
Now, I wanna be clear, and I don't think there's a problem, but I wanna be clear that this is an advisory role to me. But, to what degree, let's go back to identifying what's the problem or what's the issue.
I think Vicki has been struggling from the beginning here with getting to understand policy implications of some of the operational difficulties that SCU might be encountering. And so I think that's where this comes from. Am I right, Vicki?
Yep. I think part of it is both, well, I guess it's a couple of things. One is that for quite a few years, it appears, there's been talk of doing outreach. There's been seeming confusion as to whether the outreach we're doing is becoming the public relations arm for the SEU, which doesn't seem appropriate, or becoming receivers of suggestions on ways that we could assist the SEU in accomplishing its mission, potentially by overcoming obstacles, let's just deliver otherwise, that are getting there. Then that got too amorphous and became maybe more discrete task focusing on what problems is the SEU identifying for itself that would benefit from some think tanky like input on how to overcome those problems. I don't know if that means it's in lieu of an outreach thing or is replacing it. It could be in addition to or in lieu.
Is this, Vicki, outreach of the board, on the board getting more community involvement?
Well, again, it seemed like there were two issues. The community involvement, meaning how does the community know about all the good things that the SEU does, does the community availing itself of those opportunities? And I thought that earlier on the board had a vision of it fulfilling that role, going out and trumpeting. I think that over the course of time, we've been talking about whether or not that's what the board is supposed to do when the SEU has a marketing contractor that can, and there is other publicity and ways that the SEU gets the message out. Is that the board's purpose? So I thought we were moving from that form of community outreach where the board was making presentations to the community on what the SEU does to outreach where the board was soliciting input from community members on how to solve obstacles the SEU is facing.
And do we have a list of those obstacles that the SEU is facing?
Then in the last meeting, that became our recommendation, and I believe, and you can tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, that the SEU would identify those obstacles rather than us freelancing on that.
Well, I think we need context. I think there's two things. One is SEU, I don't know about if it's confirmed for this past year, but SEU is meeting all of its goals now. So I'm not sure how to define obstacles, because first off, it may be that they could be doing more, but they're meeting their goals. The second is the board interacting with the community in receiving information that could help inform the board to give me more advice of how to be more directive, or, you know, for us on our team to make the SEU more effective in what they're doing.
I have two questions. One, first of all, who would these stakeholders be that would be informing the board over how to overcome, assuming that there were obstacles that, or impediments or challenges that the SEU could identify? That would be critical, because I'm not clear as to who those would be, particularly given the diversity of the group itself. Would these be stakeholders, constituents of the individual board members representing certain segments of the population, or would it be the broader? But then secondly, it's not a question but a statement. I don't think that because the SAU has met its goals, that there aren't still impediments or challenges that could be addressed to make them even more effective and efficient.
So the taking those two things, one would be defining what's the problem to be solved, like what would more effective look like, and what is, you know, what's the problem to be solved. The second is who to solicit that input from.
On that note, Susan.
So with regard to the last, who to solicit, I thought it was a good idea to identify that group from whom we would solicit when we had a problem that we were identifying.
Yeah.
That we were going to aid in fixing. So if there was an issue, say, with getting, reaching humans because they aren't paying their own electricity bill, then that might define a category of people with whom it would make sense to speak.
That makes sense, and so the precursor would be the identification of the problem.
Right, which is why we asked Ted to do that when appropriate in his reports, so that we can hear from him, see what the issues are.
I think there's two ways to defend that, Lenny, is that as a board, we may have more expectation of getting more savings out of commercial buildings, but he's meeting all his marks. I mean, it's kind of like where are,
Yes, but as
what
he
do we
meets it,
flag?
but Tommy, as he's meeting his marks, he's solving problems as he goes along, okay? And you know, it may be that some of his approaches to meeting his marks are what he could manage to do. Whereas he might have started out with a larger agenda.
So,
Okay?
but
So-
are
and so
you
the
asking
point-
Ted to identify problems? Or is the board
Or issues,
to identify
ways in-
issues?
Ted has to tell us what his difficulties are, particularly because I can see where some of them are going to be. Because he has a strategy to go from more commercial and industrial, larger scale clientele, even including multifamilies. I think some of us have an idea of what the issues are, and you have successfully resolved them on a case-by-case basis. But there may be, and you know because you're living it, there may be broader, there may be a policy change that could be useful, or a legal change, or a regulatory change, that would make it easier for him to expand his work.
And is that segmented from what Vicki was talking about, also communicating successes and value of SEU?
That's distinct, okay? I think because we cannot provide advice if we don't know what the issues are. I mean, basically, that's the bottom line. We can make assumptions about what the issues are.
So Vicki or anybody kind of segment it, if talking about the successes of SEU and promoting what this, what it's doing versus identifying issues and asking to solicit stakeholder input for addressing those issues, how do we, what's the work in front of us on this?
Are they discrete and separate outcomes or deliverables so that we have, and I don't like calling it marketing. I mean, it is an educational component. That's the way that I define it. And, clearly there would be a basis for distinguishing the two between, my expectation would be that the SEU might market itself, whereas the advisory board would provide a more objective, educational component.
Or we may get involved
And
in
I'm saying that's
policy,
separate.
policy
No,
reform.
what I'm saying, that's separate from what I see as the discussion that's taking place today, where we're looking at challenges and soliciting input from separate stakeholders. They're two different functions.
Yeah, and that's why I get back to what are the problems, and that's what we asked, and I have to make them theoretically, let's say you had a goal or requirement to, do X amount of boiler replacement in multifamily buildings, and you did it, but it was hard for a couple of particular reasons. I'm gonna make this up theoretically. You found that the building code, for example, just made it really hard to do it. Or you found that the rent control, let's not get into that, but there was something there. Or that there was just a suspicion, or could be something more, not so concrete, just the building owners just were wary, didn't know who you were willing to do it. Those would be three examples of obstacles to accomplishing your goal, or that made it harder and took longer, maybe more expensive to accomplish a goal. And then were there ways that the board, could help make a policy recommendation, help set up, I mean, it would be nice if we had somebody from building management, for example, on the board, who could be the one say, okay, I'll set up a meeting with you, or I know these people and we could get together. I think that's a good
Right.
Starting out talking about something very general, and going out to the public and saying, here's the SEU and here's all the things
No,
it does.
I think we
But
tossed a good one on the table earlier. I
Yeah.
appreciate the spirit in which you raised the question. Like governmental entities, some entities just have problems accepting money. That's a challenge sometimes in trying to deal with certain customers, because like, how do I take this incentive money that the SCU is trying to, make available in order to make me move forward with the project? That, and I just throw that one out there at the 100,000 foot level, but Chairman King, I understand exactly what you're saying. And if it would help the board maybe I need to go back with staff. And, clearly we work with Dr. Long and Dr. Lawrence every week. We talk about our, various challenges.
What I'm hearing are two things, like what the item says is public meeting and outreach strategy of the board. The other is, which we kind of build up to during the year, potentially culminates into our annual report, saying these are the policy issues that need to be addressed. Either the council address them or the executive, the council hold the executive accountable to do that, but whatever, but that report, we kind of build towards the policy issues, or they can come up sooner. But it seems to me that these are somewhat, the agenda item is the advisory board public meeting and outreach strategy. What we're getting into, which is very much our wheelhouse of what this advisory board does, which is identify policy issues and help advise the executive and also to the council for the report. These are policy issues that we dealt with.
So, one of the, I agree with all that's been said. One of the reasons that I like this, because I'm always saying, what's the big picture here, is that the reality about the built environment in urban areas, homes, office buildings, apartment buildings, whatever it is, that the people that build them or own them don't pay the electric. The builder is selling, the electric or gas, but they don't pay the utility. So the builder would seemingly, this is a terrible generalization, but would put in granite countertops that are more efficient hot water, because that's going to sell the house, or the same office building. I mean, that's the way it's been. I'm not saying that's the way it is now. So that for the SEU to accomplish things, even with rebates and incentives and long-term savings and whatever, as you were pointing out in your example, the person that owns a building that isn't responsible for paying the utility bills, what is their incentive to whatever, it's not just a money incentive.
Yeah, the disruption, the complications, the time, the upsets.
So, but it's not a to the point here. It's I think particularly because you all have been doing this for a while, it would be really useful for everybody to go to step back and go, these are problems. We're getting people's attention. We're getting actual stuff installed. And again, that's just one example. I'm sure there are myriad, but I think it would be really helpful for everybody.
I had an informal conversation with Aopa and, on this very issue. And one of the things that she pointed out, Fran, was that, that building owners are not reluctant to move forward. It's just not on their radar. Okay. And that they can be incentivized or you just have to get to them where they live.
Yeah.
It was informal and.
Fair enough. I agree.
But, yes, exactly. And then you get your smaller buildings, your smaller businesses, which probably, I'm guessing, have been the hardest in some cases, the small businesses. The big commercial office buildings that are renting to the district government, renting to the federal government, they have to compete. They have to do it.
Well, now
they can't.
That's in the last 10 years.
So that policy's been taken care of. What do you give the policy that incentivizes or makes it more attractive, easier, et cetera, for, if it's a problem, the next level?
So it looks like
And it's
this.
not probably just offering more money.
It really is, and it was counterintuitive because I said, oh, well, it's the bottom line. And she said, not necessarily, that's not really.
No, because they
the
can
driver.
charge more for
Right.
a sustainable building. I mean, that's the point. And
But, it's the commercial ones, they just can't rent. No law firm, no big
But
firm,
even
no
residential,
federal.
even residential, and there's frankly a lot of ignorance abounds among some of the developers and the architects, that if you point it out to them, they can actually do a lot better.
Yeah, but you know, the most vulnerable population are tenants
Right.
that are in, you know, small or medium-sized apartments and things like that. Meaning,
Yeah, where they're paying their own.
where they're paying their own thing, yeah, so I'm not, and again, I'm not trying to, be critical of owners, because Sandra, I think your point is well taken, in a lot of cases, which is, you know, they just, 10 years ago, I would say, not my problem, now, much more awareness about energy efficiency, if they knew about those, there might be more adoption.
And even in terms of renovations and retrofits,
Right.
it's, you know, capital improvements
Right.
adds to, you know, the value, et cetera. So there are other considerations and factors that go into place.
So
And
can,
it's not just the new buildings that we're talking about, money, we're also talking about, you know, the retrofits for existing buildings, which, you know, the algorithm becomes a
So
little different.
that becomes an issue where the person, the company or the DCSCU has to be able to mobilize support from other resources to help with retrofits, which are very expensive. And so what I was gonna ask Ted, and he can tell me no, I'm perfectly happy for him to tell me no, but since we have this opportunity to make a report to council, and in our report to council, it might be helpful if we could have perhaps an executive summary which says, you know, here's all the data, here's what we know about all these bits and pieces, and you know what, we've identified these 3 regulatory issues or policy issues. Can you help draft a narrative out of your experience?
Sure.
Okay, as to what seems to be problematic, and share it with us on a timely basis, and we can determine how best to incorporate some of it, or all of it, none of it into our report?
Yeah,
I'll say yes.
Okay, great.
I won't say no.
and, you know, I'm not trying to swerve out of the advisory board's plan in any way, shape, or form, but in a city that every square inch of it seems to be renovated or upgraded, or, you know, rebuilding or new building, and, you know, there's lots of permitting. I know that there are requirements, I don't specifically recall what they are, but I know there are newer requirements about if you're renovating something to put efficient systems and things in. But is that connected to?
So John, yeah, we have a very progressive green energy code, but it's been rewritten for kind of the 2.0 version, which is, the green energy code is not voluntary.
Good.
What's the function of how that, I mean, when do you have to, it depends on new buildings, and it depends on the size of the renovation, when it kicks in. And it,
And where is it addressed? Is it addressed in the zoning permit or the planning?
We're just trying to help you. Yeah,
Just go right,
just trying to make your life hard. Give you, no, it's not, it's
Experience of a building which ought to have
just structural
been
always.
built differently.
so since we're very involved in the green building code, we could, I mean, there's 2 more reports that you guys should probably get a presentation on. One is, where are we in green building code 2.0? Because that's a little bit of the stick that encourages folks to participate in SEU. Then the other one is going to be the report we just submitted to council on the REDF funds.
That would be wonderful.
So I think those 2. All right, seems like we're wrapping up. Any,
One benefit of having more frequent meetings is they could be shorter.
I think you're right, Vicki. All right, anything else before there's a motion to adjourn?
Sorry, Tom, I just.
All right, John, thanks for your input.
Okay, see you again, soon, thanks.
Thank you all, bye-bye.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, seconded.
Aye.
To debate? All right, we'll take it by acclamation.